Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills. We are so absolutely delighted and very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have three amazing guests for you today. First up, Hannah Jessen Conway is here to celebrate Love Sounds Like. It's a beautiful picture book that talks to kids about cochlear implants and about love. It's a beautiful, beautiful conversation. You don't want to miss it. Later in the show, Kjartan Poskit will be joining us from the United Kingdom to celebrate Mega Math Maze. And we'll return to Norwalk, Connecticut to speak to Barbara Ehrenthrow. I am very excited. We have a wonderful guest today who is here to celebrate her new picture book. It's called Love Sounds Like. Please welcome to the show, Hannah Jessen Conway. Hey, Hannah. How are you?
Hello. It's so good to talk to you.
Lovely to meet you. I love the cover art on your book. It is just wonderful, and it's perfect. It's Love Sounds Like. It's your illustrator just captured what I think the story is all about.
Yeah, the cover is so beautiful, and it really speaks to the heart of the book. And oh, sorry, I keep losing you. Are you freezing on me too?
I'm here.
I hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I was jumping around a little bit.
So I was just saying that your illustrator really captured what I think the story is all about in her cover art.
Yes, yeah. Ramesh is so talented. I was connected to him through, again, April Cox. I took her self-publishing course. And we've never even met in person. We've talked over Zoom. We've exchanged lots of emails. But when I communicated to him what I was hoping to convey, with this story, he just hit the nail on the head with the art. I told him I wanted it to feel dreamy and cozy and be beautiful to look at and simple. It's not, over illustrated. There's really not a crazy amount on each page, but, I wanted it to be beautiful in its simplicity. And he just, he crushed it. It's better than I could have imagined, truly.
So in the cover art, because we're talking about a visual on a podcast, an audio podcast, it appears to be a mom and her son, and the son, they're looking at each other, they're holding each other, looking at each other with such love and affection. And what's very clear is that the son has a cochlear implant.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What was this story inspired by?
So my second son, his name is also Shepherd, like the little boy in the book. He was born profoundly deaf in December of 2023. I have an older son who's 2.5, and he's hearing. And so this completely caught us off guard. We were not expecting to give or to have a deaf child. And we found out within a few weeks of him being born, he referred or failed both of his hearing tests in the hospital. And so within 3 weeks, we had learned that he couldn't hear anything. And this was a big adjustment at first. I mean, I think any parent, when you learn something about your child, it can be scary and feel new. And so it was actually very early on in that journey that I wrote this book. I remember feeling very upset one night and saying to my husband, he hasn't even heard me say, I love you. He hasn't heard me sing to him. He hasn't heard me, comfort him or hush him when he's crying. And my husband just said, but he knows that you love him. He knows it. And so that's kind of where this idea started of how love is so much more than a sound. It's so much more than saying, I love you. It's something that we experience, as the book walks you through, with all 5 of our senses. And so he does have cochlear implants now, so he has access to sound. We're also doing sign language with him. So again, we're just really trying to reinforce that there are lots of different ways to communicate and to show love to one another. So the little boy in the book is based off of Shepherd. Obviously, the boy in the book is about 5 years older than Shepherd. Our Shepherd is only a year old. So I guess you could say this is a conversation I would hope to have with him in a few years when he can understand me a little better.
Wow. We're living in an age, the technology that we have access to is really incredible. Here we are, we're many hundred miles away from each other. I'm in Boston. You're in North Carolina. We're able to look at each other. There's a little bit of delay here and there on this call.
A little glitchy.
but we're able to see each other and talk to each other. And we're living in an age where kids who are born deaf can be given an implant, some technology that enables them to have access to sound. That's really amazing, and something that I don't even think people were dreaming of back 50, 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible. And we're so fortunate. We live in North Carolina, and we just have incredible hospitals here and a wonderful cochlear implant center. And it's been a lot the past year. There's been a lot of learning, a lot of appointments, a lot of questions, but we feel very thankful that he is going to have access to both the hearing and the deaf world. We want him to, have that choice as he grows older, and maybe he wants to have a foot in both worlds, and that is fine with us. But it's just absolutely incredible. I don't think the feeling will ever get old when I call his name and he turns to me. Cause there was a time when we weren't sure if that would ever happen. Or when he hears music and starts dancing, or we have a train that goes right, in front of our house. And the first time he heard the train outside, his eyes got big and he turned to the window. And just little things like that I had taken for granted before. It's really incredible.
If you would, could you, and I know it's difficult, so I don't mean to be too invasive, but can you just share your feelings when the doctor said, sorry, your kid can't hear?
Yeah. Oh man, I remember it so viscerally because again, it's one of those things. I mean, we walked into that ENT appointment when he was 3 weeks old, thinking, that everything was going to be okay. And it was going to be okay in a different way. But I remember when they told us, well, she kind of just left in a hurry after doing a couple hours worth of testing. And I just looked at my husband and I said, it's bad news, isn't it? And he looked back at me and he said, I think it is. And so we just kind of were taking deep breaths in that moment. We kind of knew. And so when she came back in, she had all these pamphlets and she said, yeah, I'm sorry. Your son has severe or profound hearing loss, which means he couldn't hear at all. He has profound hearing loss in both of his ears. And I just remember feeling like I was in shock. I in that moment, I didn't cry. I just kind of sat there and was trying to understand what she was saying to me. They threw a lot of words at us, like profound hearing loss. I was like, what does that even mean? Like profound hearing loss? And then they were showing us his charts and where he was registering with different sounds. And it felt very overwhelming in that moment. It was so above my head. It was so unexpected. So I don't think it really sunk in until we got to the car, and I just kind of collapsed and sat in the back seat with Shepherd, who was sleeping peacefully in his own happy world. And I cried the entire way home. And it got a little bit better each day. We started talking with people who had gone through similar things. We started researching about sign language. We started learning sign language to help us feel connected to him. We started researching cochlear implants. We got involved with a couple nonprofits here. We just really tried to jump into that world and embrace it. So it started out very much as grief, and I can happily say now that grief has turned into pure joy, and we just know Shepherd is exactly who he is supposed to be. We wouldn't go back and change it for anything. I can't believe I'm saying that, because I remember that day just wanting more than anything to be able to quote unquote fix him. But now I'm like, this is who he is. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. And so I guess, yeah, if a parent is just starting on this journey, it does feel very scary and overwhelming at the start, but now a little over a year in, I can say it's been just gift after gift after gift. And we're grateful that we get to go on this journey with him. It's been beautiful.
I've been blessed to have known and become very close friends with a number of people who have different challenges, and both physical challenges, developmental challenges. You said something that I think a lot of people wouldn't understand, but I've heard it from a lot of families. I wouldn't change. If I could go back, I wouldn't change anything. Mm-hmm. Help a parent, help anybody who's listening to this who thinks, what do you mean you wouldn't change it? You wouldn't give your kid the ability to hear and be normal. What would you say to that person?
I would say that Shepherd has already demonstrated a resilience that I think is rare. And he's taught us so much. He's shown us so much in just his 1 year. We've grown closer as a family. He has bonded with his brother in new ways. His older brother, is learning sign language and trying to help teach it to Shepherd. We've formed friendships that we wouldn't have otherwise. We've met specialists and teachers who have become truly family members. One of them came to his birthday party, a few weeks ago. There have just been so many blessings that have come out of it. All I can think is I wouldn't change it, because we would have missed out on so much richness, for our family. But also, like I said, I think it's just a part of who he is. He wouldn't be Shepherd if he could hear like us. Mm-hmm. It's a part of his story. And I always tell my older son, because he can understand all of this a little bit, the nuances a little better. I always tell him, God gave you blue eyes and brown hair, and he made you to hear. God gave Shepherd blue eyes, blonde hair, and he made him deaf. And that's who he is. It's a part of his story. And who are we to try to rewrite that story? So I wouldn't change it. I think it's who he is, and it's made our family who we are today. Yeah.
You said that you've did a lot of research. Can you help us kind of understand? We talked about how cool the technology is behind a cochlear implant, but I don't know if I really understand how it works. It's not like a hearing aid that just amplifies things.
Correct. Yeah. No, it's not a hearing aid. Shepherd actually started out with hearing aids. And they, didn't serve him, because with hearing aids, you have to have somewhat of a level of hearing to begin with. Because like you said, they amplify sound. So if there's no sound to begin with, there's nothing to amplify. And so Shepherd used hearing aids for the first several months of his life, purely to get him used to having something on his head and to stimulate the auditory nerve. So for cochlear implants, they work a little bit differently, because there are two components. There's an internal piece that actually goes inside, underneath your skull, not in your brain. Some people think, they're like, is it brain surgery? It's not brain surgery. There's a piece that goes on the inside of your skull, and then there's an external piece, where the sound goes in. So Shepherd wears processors behind his ears. They have a little microphone on them. So sound goes into those processors. It travels up through a coil into a magnet that's on the outside of his head, and it can come off and on really easily. He doesn't bathe with it. He doesn't sleep with the external piece. And that external piece sends the sound to the internal piece, where it stimulates. It goes through a little coil, which is in his cochlea. I won't get into all the ear anatomy, but it essentially stimulates the auditory nerve and replicates sound. So it enters through the external piece, is received by the receiver on the inside, and then stimulates the auditory nerve to register as sound. So he's not hearing with his ears. It's not a typical hearing experience. He's hearing with his brain in a way. It's stimulating that nerve and registering as sound. So a lot of times I describe it as now he can hear, but more so it's that he can access sound. So it's a little bit different from the way that we hear. So he has them on both sides. He takes off the external piece, like I said, for bath time, for bedtime. It falls off about 1 million times a day when he's rolling around. And as soon as they come off, he is completely deaf again. So again, it's not fixing him. It's not changing the core of who he is. He's still our deaf little guy, and we love him for it. But it is, when he wears them, it's giving him access to spoken language, which is really fascinating.
I have to ask, you've talked about how special your son is and resilient he is.
Yes.
Have you noticed that when you're talking to him, does he ever kind of look at you and go, I don't want to hear anything more anymore?
He does not yet, but I have a 2.5-year-old, so I know what's coming for me. I know we're going to reach a day where one of our friends actually, who has a daughter who's a little bit older, they do spoken and sign with her as well. They said not only does she take the processors off on the outside, she closes her eyes so that she can't see them sign. So Shepherd does not do that yet. He's only 13 months. But like I said, I have a 2.5-year-old, so I know what's coming.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the story. Are we just experiencing all the different ways that we talk about love in your book?
Yeah, so it is a rhyming bedtime story. Rhyming books are my favorite type of book to read to my 2 boys right now. And it's also, so it's a bedtime story, and it starts with a conversation, or a question, from Shepherd to his mom at bedtime. He says, "Mom, what does love sound like?" And really the question behind the question is, when I take my ears off at the end of the night, how will I still feel love? If I can't hear you say, I love you, how will I still know that love is around? How will I still access that love? And so then he and his mom start this conversation back and forth where they walk through each of the 5 senses. So they talk about not just what love sounds like, but what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it looks like, and what it feels like. So I wanted to kind of walk through each of those 5 senses as a fun way of exploring love, and also in an educational way. This is written for probably 3 to 6-year-olds is what I've been saying, 3 to 7-year-olds, which is a good time to learn about your 5 senses. We talk about them with my older son. And so this has become, just another tool to teach him something at the same time. So there's an important message about love there and the different ways we experience it, but also a little educational aspect about the 5 senses too. And really the crux of it, not to spoil it at the end, but the mother realizes that love is so much more than a sound. She goes to say, I love you to Shepherd one more time, but he's already fallen asleep. And she just kind of shrugs it off and walks down the hall and is thinking to herself, love is much more than a sound. It's okay that I didn't get to tell him I love him one more time. Love is so much more than a sound. So it was fun to work on. It was very creative. I did a lot of brainstorming with my husband and even my 2-year-old. I asked him, what does love smell like to you? And of course he was, being sarcastic and said, stinky feet. And there is a line in there that talks about Shepherd asking if love is stinky like feet. So tried to keep some of the humor in there as well.
You stole when you said, what does love smell like? The 7-year-old in me was going to mention a different part of a smelly body. Obviously, this is a great book for kids and families with a kid with a hearing challenge or a hearing loss. But I think this is a wonderful book for any family because we get to look in and start a conversation about people who are different, people who have differences. Like someone may need a cane, grandparent might need a cane to walk, where Shepherd needs this cochlear implant to access sound.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to write a book that was about hearing loss, but not about it at the same time, if that makes sense. I wanted the main character to have cochlear implants, but I didn't want the focus of the story to necessarily be about that. I wanted it to be, to go beyond just that level. And so I wanted it to be something that you could read to your kids, whether they're deaf or not, or whether they have other special needs or accommodations or not. I wanted it to be something that could really resonate with all children, with all readers, because love, again, isn't limited to just one group of people. It's not just limited to one sense. It's not just limited to one ability. So I was hopeful that it would reach both audiences, again, kind of straddling that, or creating that bridge between the deaf and the hearing communities, that there's a lot more in common than maybe we initially think.
Well, speaking of the deaf community, I've heard over the years that the cochlear implants can be very controversial to some people in the deaf community. Did you experience any pushback from anybody that, no, you shouldn't do this right now? You mentioned, you wanted Shepherd to have the ability to choose to be in both communities, but did anybody say to you, no, you should really wait and let him make the choice later?
No, I have heard that, but we did not run into any of that. Thankfully, because I think that I would have taken that. I'm a people pleaser, so I think that would have been really hard for me to hear. But I think my husband and I were also very intentional about protecting our peace. We said protecting what we knew, what was best for our child. And so we've been really intentional about kind of guarding that and making decisions based on what we know to be true, and what, with a lot of, prayer and thoughtfulness and research. But you're right. I know that can happen, and I've heard that happening to other people. But I think for us, that's where we're trying to be very intentional about learning sign language. We've met with a deaf mentor. We've taken sign language classes. We use it every single day. We have the interpreter in the corner of the TV screen when we're watching PBS. We're really trying to still incorporate that into our life. And again, we're two hearing parents. And so if he wants to really learn sign language and experience deaf culture, it's not going to be through us. And so we want to just give him the foundation and the language so that when he's old enough, if he does want to go experience it, he's not inhibited by what we didn't do for him. We just say we're trying to lay the foundation. We're not trying to pretend that we're also deaf or we exist in this deaf world, because we don't. And we don't fully understand it, and I don't know if we ever will, but we want to make sure that if Shepherd wants to one day, he at least has the foundation to be able to do so. So to answer your question, no, we did not receive any of that pushback. I know it exists, but I also know this was the right choice for our family, and we're still doing our best to set him up for success in whatever form that's going to look like in a few years.
Well, having spoken to you for the last 25 minutes or so, it's obvious that you're a very intelligent person, and you're very strong and defending your kid. But I'm curious, where did the idea that I can write a kid's book come from? Because it's not every person that kind of sets off on that journey.
I have always wanted to be an author. And so if you had asked me, in first grade what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said either a vet or a children's author. I am not a vet. I don't think that was ever in the cards for me. But yeah, I've always just loved writing. I'm a copywriter. That's my day job. And so I've done a lot of writing for other people. And I've always, kept journals and written blogs and stories for my boys that have never seen the light of day. But this was the first time where I felt like I had something that could make an impact, like I said, not just with other families who have kiddos with hearing loss, but just other families in general who want to read a sweet story at bedtime about the ways we experience love. So I think Shepherd, just gave me that final push that I needed to go ahead and try and do it. I also decided to stay home with him. I was still working part-time after my first son was born. And so I think I just needed a little side project to keep from going crazy.
Are there more kids' books coming from you in the future?
Yes, there are. I've already written several drafts. I don't know. I keep telling my husband that I'd still need to stay focused on this one. It's only been out for about 3 months now. And so I don't know if it'll be this year, but, I already know what I want my next one to be, and it's mostly written. So that's very exciting, but I don't think I'm quite ready to go through the whole process again yet. So the story is there, but I need at least a few more months of just enjoying this part of the journey.
Well, you have an open invitation to come back and celebrate that book when it is ready to be out in the world.
Oh, thank you. I will take you up on that.
Please tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Love Sounds Like and find out more about you.
Sure. Well, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart. You can find it basically on any major online retailer, but my website is hjconway.com, and that's probably the easiest one-stop shop to find out more about me, to contact me if you have questions, to find my social media handles, to order signed copies of the books if you want, to donate a book if you want to donate a book to an organization or a school that works with deaf children. So yeah, my website is probably the best starting point, and that's how you can find me or the answer to your questions there. So hjconway.com.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Love Sounds Like. It's a new picture book from our guest, Hannah Jessen Conway. Hannah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad the internet started cooperating so we could have a good chat.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from York in the United Kingdom. Our guest is here today to celebrate his Mega Math Maze. I'm really looking forward to this. Please welcome to the show, Kjartan Poskit, my friend.
Hello, Jed. Yeah, lovely to be here. Hello, everybody. Nice to be speaking to you across the Atlantic.
Yes, indeed. Isn't it amazing? We're living in a time where we have this technology. We're on the opposite sides of the ocean, and we're able to see each other, talk to each other, and we don't have to pay a fortune. I don't have to pay anything to do it.
It frightens me. I'm afraid I've only been to the US a couple of times, and it's about 40 years ago now that I went to the US, and the cost of a telephone call was just so much. But now we can see each other and chat and cost nothing.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy. Well, Mega Math Maze, this is very different from most of the books that we celebrate here. As I understand it, this is an activity book that's filled with mazes that can only be completed by solving math problems.
That's the one, yeah. I've been writing math books for, again, 30, 40 years now. But for younger people, sort of 7 or 8, there's a lot of fun to be had with maths. There's puzzles, there's tricks, there's games. But the key to it all is you must know your times tables. Do you call it times tables over? Yeah.
Well, they did
So
I don't know what they call it now, but I'm assuming.
You can't remember, can you? But, I mean, the key to it is you must know that 7 times 8 is 56. You must know this in your head. Then that unlocks the whole world of numbers for you, makes your life easier. And so what I've always wanted to do is find a book where the times tables can be part of an adventure and you have fun without realizing that you're learning something. That's the big trick. And I had the idea for this book about 10 years ago, and it's been through a lot of morphs and changes. But finally, I got a publisher who could sort of see the vision and put together this book, of which I'm immensely proud. I'll tell you that, Jed. I think it's probably the nicest book I've ever done, so I'm very pleased with it.
You must have a crack team of researchers or something, because 7 times 8, that was the one equation that I had the most difficult time memorizing. the answer to that.
I'll tell you what's good about that. Look at it the other way around. 56 is 7 times 8. If you write out the digits, it's 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's only one other sum on the times tables that will do that, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4. 12 equals 3 times 4.
Wow. Look, my life would have been much easier if you were my teacher back in the day.
This is why we have international technology to share this stuff, you know.
Well, one of the things that I've talked about with authors and many of our authors are teachers, it seems that when it comes to subjects like math and history and some of the STEM subjects, someone at some point went out of their way to develop a style of teaching that makes those subjects so uninteresting and boring, and they really shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, is math, because some people can just immediately leap on it and understand it from the age of 3. Other people could go through their entire lives being confused by it. But what I've certainly found in the UK, because I've been touring around schools for 30 years now, is up until about 20 years ago, the millennium, math was very much forced on people. You'll learn that, you will learn that. And nobody really knew why they had to learn this and that. But then the teaching changed. And all of a sudden, look, here's some money. Here's what change you should expect when you go to the store. You're planning a journey. These are the timetables. When there's a reason for learning it, all of a sudden it makes sense. It's like tying your shoelaces. If you didn't need to ever tie a shoelace, you'd never learn it. It's terribly complicated. But because you have to, you pick it up.
Yeah. And how did you get involved with math? Were you one of those kids at 3 years old? It just came naturally to you?
Again, it goes back to tricks and puzzles. I've always liked silly tricks, silly puzzles and things like that. And numbers are quite often involved with these things. Also, it was the only subject at school I was really any good at. I could do a bit of science. Sports, I couldn't do sports at all. I'm lousy at sports. I could always do the numbers. And then what had happened was I'd done some puzzle books for a publisher in the UK, Scholastic in the UK, and they'd done quite well. And they'd said to me, could I write a book on math? There was a series out called Horrible Histories, and then there was a series called Horrible Science, which made these subjects fun. And they said, could I write a book called Murderous Math, or Murderous Maths, with an S, as we say in the UK? And I said, I'll only write the book providing it doesn't look like a math book. It starts off with some jokes, something to read, cartoons. Let's have a bit of fun. And I wrote that book in about 2 or 3 weeks, and it bought the house. It was a winner. And in fact, it was only going to be one book, and I've written, I think, about 15 in that series now, plus I've done spin-offs. And I've toured all over the UK. I've been invited all over the world to talk about them. But I'm afraid I'm one of these people who can't do aeroplanes in airports, and so I don't really go. But I go all over the UK. And I've been to Dublin. I've been Dublin. Yeah, it's been lovely over there in Ireland.
Wonderful. My son was probably one of those guys at 3. He certainly was reading before he got to school and was probably getting a handle on math when he was young. But he's one of these guys who would do the math in his head and never write it out, so his paper would always come back and he'd get failing grades on it. And I'd go in and I'm like, I don't understand. He seems to know everything. And the teacher would be like, yes, but he won't write out the work. So I can't give him credit, even though it's the right answer. I can't give him credit because I don't know if he understands it. Right. And so he just hated math.
That sounds a bit harsh. I mean, certainly in the UK, if you get the right answer, you certainly get something. But from the teacher's point of view, they want to know that you know how you got there. I mean, I have to say, estimating and a lucky guess is quite a skill on its own. But if they're going to take, math further, I think the teacher has to be convinced that, look, the guy can do this stuff, we can progress, rather than a few lucky guesses, but it's not going to last forever. But it does seem a bit harsh if you've got no marks at all. I think that's kind of unfair.
I thought so, too, and it certainly turned him off to maths. He's a very talented, very intelligent guy. He's an adult now, but he just didn't...
So that is a real shame. Can I ask what he does now?
He works for the podcast. He's our promotion director.
All right, okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what job you've got, there'll be math there somewhere. If he's doing promotions, he'll need to know how many people are listening to this podcast for a start and figures like that. It comes into everything. There's no escaping it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about how Mega Math Maze works. Is it just individual mazes, or are they connected?
Yes. What happened was a few years ago, I had another book out, and it was a book called Warp Maze. And although it's only maze singular, inside the book there are, I think, 12 different mazes, but you jump between them. You go along a maze, and it might be a house or something like that, and there'll be little doors. And when you reach a funny-coloured door, you then look through the book to see where the door comes out, and it might come out on the surface of the moon, it might come out underwater, and then using these doors, you travel through the book. And when I was trying to think of the idea to have a fun times tables book, I thought, why don't I try it with the times tables? But rather than having doors, we've got holes in the pages. So you go along a path, you'll see a signpost that might say 6 times 3, and then the path will divide up, and there'll be maybe 2 or 3 options, and there'll be holes in the page. And at the bottom of the hole will be 3 different answers, and there might be 16, 18, 28. Well, you've done 6 times 3, you drop through, and you land on the number 18. That's the correct answer. And if you get it right, then you can continue. If you get it wrong, you hit a dead end, or what's even worse, by the time you're getting towards the end of the book, it will send you back to an earlier part of the maze. The only way you can get through the whole book is if you know all your times tables right up until 12 multiplied by 12. If you get any of them wrong, you'll never get through the book. That's the basic premise of the book.
Wow, that sounds like it does. It sounds like a lot of fun, and a fun way to practice your times tables. Certainly a lot more fun than doing the old.
Can I just say, Jed, I'm very fortunate. I can see you here. We're talking on the podcast. The people listening won't be able to see you. Your face was just priceless there. That was a wonderful face you put there. I'm sorry your fans are missing this.
I'll have to roll back and check that out. There was a time here. I don't know. Because I, like you, I made a living touring schools for 35 years here in the States and Central America. And, I don't know about you. I think it's a wonderful way to make a living. It's just great being with.
Oh, it's been fantastic. When I used to play pianos in pubs and bars. That was my main income. And I also used to work in TV, did a bit of presenting and an awful lot of studio warm-ups and consultation and that. So when I kind of moved away from London, I was down in London. The only thing available to me being an author, I thought I'd just spend 8 hours a day sitting in a room talking to myself and typing stuff. I have no idea I was going to get invited just everywhere. I mean, if I'd been able to take it up, I could have gone anywhere in the world, China, America, India, Australia, and talked about my books. I just, unfortunately, having a young family and also not being a great traveller, I didn't take that up. But certainly I've had emails from all over the world, particularly about the math books. And I just tried to write a book just to sort of make people laugh, do a few sums, have a few jokes. It never occurred to me that I was going to get emails from, well, certainly from the US, a lot from the US, homeschoolers who got me books and saying this has really, really helped my kids. It's the only books they read. And it's, I don't know, I didn't expect it to go this far. And it's been great. It's been such fun.
That's really wonderful. Well, we'll have to get you. Kjartan told me that he's not great at Zoom, although he's doing great for this interview. But we have to get Zoom skills up so you can take some of those invitations from around the world and talk to classes via Zoom.
It's a thought. What I have done is, particularly during lockdown when I couldn't get out and perform live, I did videos for schools. They're not obviously quite as interactive because I do a video, but I do them tailor-made for each school because I do a little bit about where they are and how many miles it is and a few questions about actually where they live. The interactive classroom thing, I don't think I've ever done one of those on a Zoom. It's just part of the problem is I now have a good computer, but up until about 6 months ago, the computer kept breaking down. And I bought this computer specially so I could talk to Workman, the publishers in New York. Our first Zoom call, I thought, I don't want to mess this up. This is nice people. They're putting out my book. They're putting a lot of work into it. The least I can do is have a decent computer and have a conversation with the people. So that's kind of helped a lot now that I've got a better computer.
Speaking of conversations, I had a conversation at a small party with a stranger, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but he was going on and on about how ridiculous it was that we're making kids go through the torture of learning math and memorizing their math tables and learning this and that, because after all, we have calculators, and so kids don't need to learn all this stuff. They can just use the machine. If you were in that conversation, I just walked away from it, but if you were in that conversation, what would you say to that man?
Very easy is that. If you rely on a calculator, you push one wrong button and it can make a massive difference, particularly if you're dealing with money. You go into a shop and, I don't know, you buy one orange for 10 cents and they say, right, do you want to buy two, get one free, or do you want to buy one and get one half price? Working out deals like that. Calculator's not going to help you. You have to have a number instinct to get through life. And the other thing is, if you push the wrong button on the calculator and get a really weird answer, something in your brain has to flash up and say, that doesn't look right. And unless you know roughly how the numbers work, including your times tables, you could end up in a lot of trouble. Yeah, obviously, the calculator can do the hard work, but you really need to have a number instinct. If you rely purely on the calculator, you're actually a little bit helpless. It's like going swimming, but with a ring. You know, just if that ring breaks down, you need to be able to do a couple of strokes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were mentioning, that you're talking or your books are influencing kids all over the world. Do you find that there are different approaches to math in different countries and regions?
I wouldn't like to say about the approaches because they're reading my books. I'm not getting that kind of feedback. What I am getting is different nations' abilities at maths, which is quite frightening. I get some of the best emails I get come from Singapore. And you get little people who've obviously read my books from the start. And my books are generally geared at kids, maybe starting at sort of 7 or 8. And then if a subject lends itself to it, it'll take it up to maybe some of the stuff that we're doing in school, maybe 15 or 16. But that's my personal limit. I don't go much beyond that myself. But I'll get little kids who'll send me an email. And first of all, it'll be quite a simple maths question. And then about a year later, I'll get an email. Can you help me again? I'm trying to work on the expansion of the McClure and Taylor series with a sort of vector number field. Oh, what are you talking about? And I have to go back to, I'm really sorry, but actually, this is a bit beyond me. Then I get a very disappointed answer saying, we thought you understood all this stuff. No, I'm not even near you. You're too clever.
You surpassed the master.
They do leapfrog. I mean, the other thing, and it sounds like I'm maybe boasting a bit here, but just in recent years, I've had an awful lot of messages from people who are doctors of mathematics, professors of mathematics, from all over the place, just saying that they got started by reading my books when they were 8 years old. In fact, I was doing an event a couple of years ago in Sheffield, the UK, and there was a lady who I think was of Indian origin, but she'd read my books in India, and then she'd gone, I think she's based in New York City, over there, and she'd raised a little girl and given a little girl my books. And then she's doing a little trip to the UK, and they managed to come and see me in Sheffield, and she introduced herself. And she'd sent me an email when she'd been a little girl in India, and I'd replied to it. And she had a printout of my reply that I'd sent to her. She'd kept it and sent it to her daughter. I mean, like I say, I was just trying to write a book with a few little jokes and a bit of fun. It never occurred to me it was going to go around the world on this league, so it's been great.
That's really wonderful. How does it feel to know that you've made a difference in so many kids' lives all over the world?
It makes me unbearably conceited. No, it's sorry. That's maybe a slightly glib answer, but no, pride. Obviously, I mean, the pride is enormous. Every email I get, apart from one or two, rude ones, but I always reply, because if they've taken the trouble to find my website and send a message, and their messages are almost always really nice, I always try and reply. And I have a very, very clever friend who first was a young reader of my books, but we're still in touch. And Michael's now 35 years old. But if they ask a question that I can't answer, I put it to Michael, and Michael spends his time and he replies for me. He's really, really good. So it's great, and it's like a kind of family, really. There's an awful lot of people. There was a chat group at one point, and there was a Facebook group. I don't really follow these things, but they're all kind of sitting there. Trouble is, the Murderous Mass series, I haven't had a book out in that series, a new one, for about 10 years, and so as a title, that's kind of disappeared. But when it comes to mega math mazes, hopefully there'll be new groups all coming up, because certainly the Mega Math Maze book, once you've gone through it, you can then unlock secret doors and get back, and there are further maze challenges, and some of them are really, really tricky. So I'm hoping that maybe little groups will form and say, have you any idea how we go back and we find all the perfect numbers and all the tetrahedral numbers? That'd be really great if that happens. I'll be even more unbearable then, Jed.
Well, is there any thought of creating a new murderous math book?
The publishers themselves and the editorial team are now disbanded. It's just everybody moves on, and I think nearly all of them are women, and they go away, and of course they have their families and come back to different careers once they've taken their child break now. But funnily enough, the Mega Math tables, I'd had this idea for a long time, and I was just trying to find a publisher who understood what I was trying to do with it, because most publishers want a book with lots of words and characters and narratives, and numbers frighten them. And in fact, Tracy, my friend, who's been the publisher that's made this happen in the UK, she was the first ever editor on the Murderous Mass books in 1997, I think that was. And we've always kept in touch. And so when I realised that Tracy had a little publishing firm, I approached her. And so there's me, gone to see Tracy. And suddenly, the two of us working together again, it was wonderful. It's like falling back 25 years in time. And we've had such fun on it. And now we've got to this place where the book's going to be launched in the US, which we are both terribly thrilled about. It's been good.
That's really super. And it's obvious that you have a great passion for this, and you've helped so many kids. I love it. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Mega Math Maze and find out more about you.
Well, it's a bit of a mess, but I do have a website. My first name, kjartan.co.uk. If you go on that website, then there's actually a link now on that homepage to Mega Math Maze, or if not, there will be by the time this podcast's finished. And then that also takes you to all the other rubbish I've done, music for TV, stage shows I've written, all sorts of... It's not a very good website. I put it up about 25 years ago, but it's got everything there.
Wonderful. We've had a great time talking to a true Renaissance man. He is the author of Mega Math Maze. Our guest has been Kjartan Poskit. Kjartan, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for listening, everybody. Good luck to you all in Connecticut and America, but wide.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Back here in Norwalk, Connecticut at the Authorpalooza in Norwalk, and my guest right now is Barbara Ehrenthrow. Barbara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Barbara was sharing with me that she had a radio show that talked about books and authors.
Yes, I did. It was called Books and Entertainment, Tales from the Pages, and it was on once a month, and I would interview authors. It was lots of fun.
Yeah. So tell us about the book that you're sharing with people today.
It's called If I Could Be Like Jennifer Taylor, and it is a book about a girl who does not feel good about her body, and she's been bullied by this perfect girl, Jennifer Taylor. Jennifer wants to be in the Olympics, and she is a gymnast. And so Jennifer has a terrible problem. Carolyn finds out one day in school, actually the first day of school, when she finds out that Jennifer is going to be taking her to the nurse after she fainted. Carolyn is so upset about the bullying that she fainted in gym. And then when she gets to the gym, Jennifer says, okay, I'll keep this secret, but you have to do something for me. And so she winds up doing her homework, and then they become friends. Wow. And she finds her secret, which is something that I don't want to give away, but it's something that a lot of girls struggle with.
Yeah.
And it's about holding secrets and keeping secrets for each other. She has to keep it from her not popular friends, and Jennifer's very popular, and so she keeps the secret for a long time.
Wow. Sounds like a great middle grade novel.
I think kids will love it. There's even a little romance in there. Jennifer is going out with this, the quarterback of the high school football team, and he's a sophomore, and she's, in middle school, so there's a big deal about that. And my character, Carolyn, has a big crush on him.
Now, what inspired this story?
I was going to Manhattanville College, and there was an creative studies week going on, and there was going to be a workshop with Paula Danziger. I don't know if anybody remembers her, but Paula was a really big children's author. So I wanted to get into that workshop, but to get into it, I had to write 3 pages of a children's story. And that night, I took something from my daughter, and I divided her into 2 characters. So she's both Carolyn and Jennifer. And that's how it started. And I brought the 3 pages to Paula. And Paula looked at them when I had my chance to be with her, individually. And she wrote, cut on every single page. And not only that, but this is the kind of person Paula was. She took the pages, turned it over, and rewrote my story for me.
Wow.
So the first page of my story is very much like Paula.
Wonderful. Wow, that must have been a real thrill for you.
It was. I kept those pages. They're like in plastic now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does it feel knowing that your book is out there and making a difference in young people's lives?
Well, it feels really good. The other day, I had given my neighbor's children one of the books, and she read it. She was only 8, and I said to my neighbor, you think she'll be able to really understand it, because there's some heavy things in that book? She said, oh, no, she'll be fine. So she read it, and then she came back and wanted to talk to me, and she said, I love the book. I loved it. I said, well, what made you love it? She said, it's so real. It's about real people. And I said, don't you read things about real people? She said, no. She said, a lot of it is not about real people. So I like that I'm making a difference, that I'm getting things about this particular problem, which a lot of girls have, into the hands of children. And I love it when they come and tell me how wonderful it made them feel.
That's fantastic. Is there a website people can go to find out more about you and your book?
Yes, you can go to my blog, barbara.aarontrue@blogspot.com. My website is being done now, but it will be Barbara Aarontrue, so you just look that name up. I'm on Amazon too. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Threads.
And remind us again the name of the book.
The name is If I Could Be Like Jennifer Taylor, and it was actually published in 2011, but republished in a brand new cover right now, and it is the first book of a series, the Mill Valley High series. All of the girls go to Mill Valley High, and you will meet them in the first book. Then in the second book, Who is Jennifer Taylor, which is coming out soon, you will see, their interactions. And in the third book, you'll see them as juniors, and it'll be very wonderful. It'll be lots of romance and fun.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids on Instagram, and @JeadlyMagic on Twitter. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, and our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Hannah Jessen Conway. Please be sure to check out Love Sounds Like. Also want to thank Kjartan Poskit. Please be sure to check out Mega Math Maze. And we want to thank our friend from Arthurpalooza in Norwalk, Connecticut, Barbara Aaronthrow. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.